You have some nerve showing up here. I stepped between them and the entrance, my wedding dress rustling with the sharp movement. Lauren, sweetheart, we're your parents. We have every right to be here, my mother said, adjusting her expensive hat. Rights? You lost those rights when you threw me out with nothing but a suitcase and told me I was dead to you. That was years ago. We've changed. I should be the one walking you down that aisle, not some stranger, my father insisted, straightening his tie. Stranger? That stranger took me in when you left me homeless. He fed me when you let me starve. My parents cut me off at 18, then showed up at my wedding, demanding to walk me down the aisle. Hi, I'm Lauren. Today I'm going to tell you my story. But before I continue, please like, share, and subscribe to hear more stories like this. Growing up, I thought I had the perfect family. My parents, Richard and Diane, were successful real estate developers who gave me everything material I could want. Private schools, designer clothes, exotic vacations. But there was always this underlying current of control, this sense that their love came with conditions. Lauren, remember, image is everything, my mother would say, smoothing down my hair before every family event. The Montgomerys have a reputation to maintain. I discovered what those conditions were the day I turned 18. It started like any other birthday. I came downstairs expecting breakfast and presents, maybe even a car since they'd been hinting at it for months. Instead, I found my parents sitting at the dining table with stern expressions and a manila folder between them. Sit down, Lauren, my father said, not even wishing me happy birthday. What's going on? I asked, sliding into my usual chair. My mother pushed the folder toward me. This is your trust fund documentation. As of today, you have access to $1 million. My jaw dropped. $1 million? I knew we were well off, but this was beyond what I'd imagined. However, my father continued, there are conditions. You'll attend the university we've selected, major in business, and after graduation, you'll work at our company. The trust fund will be released in increments as you meet these milestones. I stared at the papers, my excitement evaporating. What if I don't want to major in business? Then you don't get the money, my mother said simply. But I want to be a teacher. You know that. I've been volunteering at the elementary school. I love working with kids. Teaching? My father scoffed. You want to throw away your potential to make $40,000 a year? Absolutely not. It's not about the money, Dad. It's about doing something meaningful. Meaningful? My mother's voice turned icy. What's meaningful is continuing the family legacy. What's meaningful is not embarrassing us by becoming some underpaid public servant. The argument escalated quickly. I tried to explain my passion for education, how I'd already been accepted to the teaching program at State University. They countered with threats and ultimatums. I'm not signing anything, I finally declared, pushing the folder back across the table. I'm going to State University, and I'm going to be a teacher. The silence that followed was deafening. My parents exchanged a look I'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, final. Then you're no longer our daughter, my father said quietly. What? You heard him, my mother stood up. If you won't follow the path we've laid out for you, then you can forge your own. Without us. You're kicking me out? On my birthday? You have 1 hour to pack your things, my father said, already turning away. Take only what fits in a suitcase. Everything else stays here. Dad, please. 1 hour, Lauren. And don't try to contact us. As far as we're concerned, we have no daughter. The next hour was a blur. I threw clothes into an old suitcase, grabbed my few personal items. My mother stood in the doorway, making sure I didn't take anything excessive. Your car keys. She held out her hand when I was done. How am I supposed to get anywhere? That's no longer our concern. I ended up at a cheap motel that first night, crying into a thin pillow with exactly $247 in my wallet. But as the sun rose the next morning, something hardened inside me. They wanted me to come crawling back. They didn't know their daughter very well. I got a job at a diner within 2 days. The owner, Frank, was a gruff man in his 60s who took one look at me and somehow knew I was desperate. You ever waited tables before? He asked. No, but I'm a fast learner. Can you start now? Yes. That's how I met Marty, Frank's brother, who came in every morning for coffee and eggs over easy. He was a retired teacher who spent his mornings at the diner reading newspapers and chatting with regulars. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world," he said to me one morning after I'd been working there a week. "Just tired," I mumbled, refilling his coffee. "Tired or troubled?" Something about his kind eyes made me want to tell the truth. During my break, I found myself spilling the whole story. Marty listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You know, my wife and I always wanted kids," he finally said. "Never happened for us. She passed 5 years ago, and this big old house feels pretty empty. I've got a spare room if you need it. No rent, just help with groceries and keep an old man company." I stared at him. "You don't even know me. I know you chose your principles over $1 million. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." That's how I ended up living with Marty, who became more of a father to me than Richard ever was. He helped me apply for financial aid, drove me to campus for registration, and celebrated with me when I got enough grants and loans to cover tuition. Living with Marty was nothing like living with my parents. There were no conditions on his kindness, no threats underlying his support. When I struggled with money, he'd casually mention needing help with some project that would coincidentally pay exactly what I needed. "The gutters need cleaning," he'd say, then hand me $100 for an hour's work. "Marty, that's too much. That's the going rate. Don't argue with your elders." College wasn't easy. I worked at the diner throughout, sometimes pulling doubles to make ends meet. But every time I felt sorry for myself, I remembered that I was building something real, something mine. My parents kept their word. I was dead to them. They changed their phone numbers, blocked me on social media. Mutual acquaintances told me they'd started telling people they were childless when asked. "It's like you never existed," my old neighbor Mrs. Chen told me when I ran into her at the grocery store. "They renovated your room into a home gym." It stung, but not as much as I'd expected. Marty's unconditional support had shown me what family really meant. I graduated with honors, and Marty was there in the front row, cheering louder than anyone when I walked across that stage. Frank closed the diner for the day so all my coworkers could attend. That's when I realized I hadn't lost a family. I'd gained one. My first teaching job was at an inner-city elementary school, exactly the kind of place my parents would have been horrified by. The kids were challenging, the resources limited, but I loved every minute of it. That's where I met Daniel. He was the music teacher, passionate about bringing arts education to underfunded schools. We bonded over staying late to help struggling students and dreaming about all the ways we could change the education system. "You know what I love about you?" he said one night as we cleaned up after a school concert. "You could have had an easy life, but you chose this instead. You chose meaning over money." Daniel proposed 2 years later, in our classroom, with 25 third graders as witnesses. It was perfect, chaotic, joyful, and real, just like our life together. Planning the wedding was bittersweet. Every decision reminded me of the family who should have been involved. But Marty stepped up again, offering to walk me down the aisle. "I'd be honored," he said when I asked, tears in his eyes. "You're the daughter I never had, Lauren." We kept the wedding small and simple. The guest list was filled with fellow teachers, Frank and the diner crew, and the friends who'd become family. We were 2 weeks from the big day when everything changed. I was at the venue, finalizing decorations with Emma, my maid of honor, when my phone rang. Unknown number, local area code. "Hello? Lauren, this is Patricia Williams. I work with your mother." My stomach dropped. "Is everything okay?" "Your parents' company is in serious trouble. They've been covering it up, but the news is about to break. Bad investments, over-leveraged properties, the works. They're going to lose everything." "What does this have to do with me?" "They know about your wedding. They're planning to show up and make a scene, try to reconcile now that they need help. They're hoping you'll support them financially. They know Daniel's family has money, and they figure as a teacher you must have a good heart." I thanked Patricia and hung up, my hands shaking. After 5 years of silence, my parents wanted back in my life, not because they missed me, but because they needed money. "What are you going to do?" Emma asked after I told her. Prepare for them, I said. They want to crash my wedding? Let them try. I spent the next week making preparations. I hired security for the venue, gave them photos of my parents and strict instructions. I also reached out to a few journalist friends who covered business news, giving them a heads up about the story. The morning of my wedding, I was getting ready in the bridal suite when there was a commotion outside. They were here. Let me handle this, Emma said, but I stopped her. No, I need to do this. I walked out in my wedding dress to find my parents at the venue entrance, arguing with security. They looked different. Older, definitely, but also diminished. They saw me and their faces lit up with false warmth. Lauren, sweetheart! My mother rushed forward, but security held her back. Tell them we're your parents. Tell them we belong here. That's when I stepped between them and the entrance, letting years of hurt fuel my words. You have some nerve showing up here? Lauren, sweetheart, we're your parents. We have every right to be here, my mother said, adjusting her expensive hat, probably one of the last designer pieces she owned. Rights? You lost those rights when you threw me out with nothing but a suitcase and told me I was dead to you? That was years ago. We've changed. I should be the one walking you down that aisle, not some stranger, my father insisted, straightening his tie. Stranger? That stranger took me in when you left me homeless. He fed me when you let me starve. He believed in me when you called me a disappointment. We made mistakes, my mother's voice cracked. But we're still your parents. We've been watching your career, Lauren. You've become such an accomplished teacher. We're proud of you. Proud? I laughed bitterly. You're not proud. You're broke. I know about the company, about the investigations. You're here because you need money, not because you love me. My father's face went pale. How did you— It doesn't matter. Yes, we've had some setbacks, but family helps family. Family? I felt tears streaming down my face, but my voice remained steady. Family doesn't abandon you for choosing your own path. Family doesn't show up only when they need something. Please, Lauren, my mother was crying now. We'll lose everything. The house, the cars, our reputation. Your reputation, I interrupted. That's all you ever cared about. Well, I have news for you. Those journalists over there, they're covering the wedding of the Teacher of the Year who overcame family abandonment. Want to know what angle they're really interested in? The parents who threw out their daughter for choosing education over money, who are now bankrupt because of their own greed. They looked over to see the photographers and reporters I'd pointed out. You called the press on us? My father's mask finally slipped. I protected my wedding from people who would use it for their own gain. The same people who taught me that image is everything. How's this for image? You ungrateful? I think it's time you left. Marty appeared beside me, placing a protective hand on my shoulder. Lauren has a wedding to attend. Her real family is waiting inside. My parents looked at Marty, at me, at the security guards and journalists. For a moment, I thought my mother might make another plea. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and grabbed my father's arm. This isn't over, my father said quietly. Yes, it is, I replied. It was over 5 years ago when you chose money over your daughter. Good luck with the bankruptcy. Security escorted them away as the journalists followed, sensing a bigger story. I stood there for a moment, feeling free. Completely, finally free. You okay, kiddo? Marty asked. Yeah, I said, surprised to find it was true. I'm perfect. Ready to walk me down the aisle? The wedding was beautiful. As Marty walked me down the aisle, I felt nothing but joy. Daniel's eyes were full of tears as I approached, and I knew he'd heard about what happened outside. During the reception, Frank made a toast about the scared girl who'd walked into his diner 5 years ago and became the confident woman celebrating today. My fellow teachers shared stories about my dedication to our students. To family, Marty raised his glass during his speech, the ones we choose and who choose us back. Later, I found out the full extent of my parents' downfall. The investigation revealed years of questionable business practices. Nothing illegal enough for jail, but enough to destroy their reputation. They'd over-leveraged everything, assuming the market would always go up. When it crashed, they couldn't cover their debts. The bankruptcy was spectacular and public. They lost the house, the cars, the country club membership, everything they'd valued more than their daughter. Patricia told me they moved to a small apartment in another state, too ashamed to stay where everyone knew their story. The journalists had a field day with the contrast, the parents who'd prioritized wealth over family losing everything, while the daughter they'd abandoned thrived by choosing purpose over profit. One article went viral. Teacher of the Year credits success to escape from toxic family values. I never heard from them again. Sometimes I wonder if they ever truly understood what they lost. Not the money or the status, but the daughter who would have loved them unconditionally if they'd just let her be herself. A year after the wedding, Marty called me while I was grading papers. "Turn on Channel 7, he said. The news was covering a human interest story about an elderly man in Arizona who'd won $1 million in the lottery. He was donating it all to education charities. "In honor of all the teachers who choose meaning over money," the man said to the reporter. The camera zoomed in on his face. It was my father, looking older, wearing a simple polo shirt. Beside him, my mother nodded, tears in her eyes. "We lost our daughter because we couldn't see the value in her choices," my father continued. "This won't bring her back, but maybe it'll help other parents see what really matters." I sat there stunned. It wasn't an apology. They still hadn't tried to contact me. But it was an acknowledgement, maybe the only one they could manage. That night, I wrote them a letter. Not to reconcile, that ship had sailed, but to acknowledge what they'd done. I told them about my students, about the 3 kids that year alone who decided to become teachers because of my class. I told them about Daniel and our plans to start a family. I ended with, "I hope you found peace, I have." I never sent it. Some words are meant for us, not them. Instead, I started a scholarship fund for aspiring teachers from low-income families. I named it after Marty. Looking back, getting cut off at 18 was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to discover who I really was, to build a life based on my values, not theirs. My parents thought they were punishing me by taking away their money and support. Instead, they freed me from the golden cage they'd built. They're living proof that karma doesn't always need help. Sometimes people create their own downfall through the very qualities that made them cruel. Their greed led to risky investments. Their obsession with image left them without real friends when scandal hit. Their conditional love left them without family when they needed it most. I didn't need to plot revenge. I just needed to live well, love deeply, and let their choices catch up with them. What boundaries have you had to set with family to protect your own path? Sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most authentic life.